and open these many links that you have sent me. So,
you're welcome.
Yeah.
We're prepared this week.
We are prepared. Well, go ahead.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to our weekly Unauthorized Caucus. I'm Joanna Spilger, and this is my colleague Ryan Hite coming to you from the Clayton office in St. Louis, Missouri. And this week we have a bunch of different topics we'd like to cover with you. So Ryan's actually pulling up a bunch of links I sent him, and they're actually all the press releases that he's written in the last week of some awesome decisions that have come down or just some crazy things that are happening with Congress right now. So should I get into the first topic?
Yeah, let's talk about it. We have, and you know, from our era, particularly Jordan and I here around the office, we love puns. We just can't help it. So it really feels like it has been a tale of two very different branches of government this week, because we've got a lot of good stuff from the Supreme Court returning to constitutionality. But Congress, however, not so much. Congress has been silly.
Yeah, absolutely.
What has Congress been doing, Joanna?
So go on ahead and share this press release that you sent out yesterday. It's called Latest Bombshell, J6 Narrative Falls Apart Within Hours. So you probably heard about the January 6th hearings that have been going on the last couple of weeks. And it's from what they call the select committee, and it's from a select committee. There are very few people on there that actually have good judgment with these hearings. And this week they had... and I had her name is Cassidy Hutchinson, to testify, and this happened yesterday. And she told a really, really interesting story about former President Donald Trump and how he was coming back on January 6th, and his driver wouldn't let him go to the Capitol building, and so he tried to grab the steering wheel. And this is what she said during her testimony, which, of course, was under oath, and that he tried to grab the steering wheel and take control of the vehicle. Well, this is all hearsay. She wasn't actually in the vehicle when it happened. And the Secret Service and others have come out saying that is completely false information.
And I mean, in fact, one thing, Liz Cheney actually held up this note that this lady purported to have written. Said, oh, yeah, that's my note. Well, literally less than 2 hours after her testimony took place, one of the White House counsels, his representation came out and said, no, that's a note written by my client, by the White House counsel at the time, or someone in the White House counsel's office. That's not hers. And then very quickly, like you just said, the Secret Service, who I think if one part of government we all consider somewhat still solemn and professional, it's the Secret Service, who does their job no matter the politics. And they essentially instantly came out and said, we'll testify on record that never happened. No such conflict took place, and no such president grabbed for the steering wheel of a vehicle. So it came crashing down literally minutes after everything ended, how silly it was. And in fact, the lady may have perjured herself, quite frankly, with some of the things she said under oath that are apparently pretty concrete and provable lies. So,
because different ones are saying, she's young, she's getting her career started. Maybe she was trying to do this to help start her career, but really this is going to hurt her, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Jack Posobiec is someone we recommend you would follow for a lot of information on this. Not only the writings that he does over at Human Events, but his Human Events Daily podcast is a great little resource. I hope that you're signed up for ours. By the way, there's the plug. Go to phyllisschlafly.com. Up at the top banner, you can sign up with your name and email. Get our daily wink email. It comes out. We keep it really brief. A few links and a couple things that you need to know. We want to make it helpful. Likewise, every single day, Jack Posobiec with Human Events Daily also does a short 20 to 25 minute podcast that touches on several things. He had a lot to say about Cassidy Hutchinson and gets a lot of information very quickly from behind the scenes. So that would be an interesting resource as the January 6th committee continues to put on their show hearings and do all kinds of ridiculous antics. Jack is one of the ones that I know we look to, and then we try to talk about the same types of things. So there's a good resource tip for you to watch as they continue to have bombshell hearings that get debunked in minutes.
It's just embarrassing.
It really was. It was sad. This week was just a sad week for Congress. So there's one branch that we've talked about. We're going to keep it nice and crisp today. We don't want to waste everyone's beautiful Thursday as we're all preparing to head off for Independence Day. But there's a good one to look at, the embarrassment of Congress. But
we wanted
to branch.
Yeah, we wanted to highlight 5 awesome decisions that the Supreme Court has decided on the last week. And so we're going to highlight all of them. We might not talk in depth with all of them because we have had past videos. Last week, we talked about the Carson v. Macon decision that came out. And so if you'd like to, check that out on our YouTube page. And go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't to our YouTube page. And make sure you like this video and share it with your friends right now. But again, we're going to go ahead and touch on those 5 different cases that have come out just this week that are huge wins for conservatives.
Yeah. 7 days, and lots of decisions. But these 5 that we've been focusing on, you mentioned Macon last week. I mean, there was a huge decision there, not only for religious liberty, but also for educational freedom. The Supreme Court told the state of Maine, you've been giving out these grants with public money. You can't discriminate against families using those at religious institutions if that's what they're going to choose to do as far as schooling for their children. So not only the big right for the win, not only a big win for the rights of parents and families to decide education for themselves, but also to not have the state very specifically discriminating against Christian-based schools. That was a big one. Later that day,
you want to highlight this one because you're more familiar with it
sure.
than I
Well,
am.
later that day, we also had a wonderful blow delivered to New York and subsequently California, we found out, who both technically have concealed carry allowances in their laws, but it came at a very high cost. You had to essentially prove to the government this great burden of proof as to why you as a citizen ought to be able to use your Second Amendment rights, the right to bear arms, in your own self-defense. Something that the court has clearly laid down before D.C. v. Heller. They referenced quite a few. But New York and California, you want a concealed carry permit, you have to prove to us why you have a special need above and beyond just living and being an American citizen, why you get to exercise that right. And thankfully, someone challenged that, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. And sure enough, the Supreme Court came back and said, no, the burden of proof is on the government to prove why someone's rights ought to be suspended, changed, or infringed in any way. And commit a crime, obviously, that's how it works. Your rights are suspended in America to an extent, depending on the crime. But it is not the other way around. The citizen has an obligation or has a fundamental right that you have an obligation to uphold, and the burden's not on them to prove why in a special case they need to use it. So that was huge. And not only New York, but then also California over the weekend announced that their may issue, which means we might issue you a permit rather than we shall do it when you apply. Those were upended. You no longer can ask for good cause or whatever their language is, which is essentially, please, please, dear government, let me have special permission because I really need to exercise one of my fundamental Bill of Rights that's owed to me. So that was a huge decision, and a good one that is still echoing across the Second Amendment and due process. That's a huge one for due process too, because, well, you don't get that right until you prove it. Well, no, that right is listed down. You have to tell me why not. So that was a great win too.
And then on Friday, we all know the decision that came down on Friday, and we actually have a video, a special live stream that Ryan and Jordan did on Friday night. But that was the Dobbs v. Jackson case. And so we are so excited that the decision for abortion is now at the state level again, and that we get to decide what our state will do. And actually for Missouri, I think if we weren't the first state, we were the first state that got our trigger law into place, which was huge. We were so excited about that.
That activated that. And we can dive in more into this one in a minute because we have a special announcement that we want to let everyone know about, something that's coming, a resource for all of you. But yeah, there was, I think it was, were there 3 or 4 states, I believe it was, I forget, on Friday specifically, and then subsequently over the weekend, states with these trigger laws immediately started going into effect. And I know Missouri Attorney General and Governor, within about 20 and then 45 minutes, those 2 offices had officially signed the documents and proclaimed, all right, elective abortions are illegal in Missouri now. That is not an option on the table. And several other states as well went through. And again, that's something we can come back to. We'll talk about that. That word elective is very key because, of course, as the left comes in, there's also the, supposedly pro-choice right. I'll put that in air quotes because I don't think that truly exists. But as all those factions started coming in, there has been a swirl of information. What does it actually mean? What's actually included morally, legislatively, legally? Let's get into that in a minute, though, because that has to do with our special announcement. But what else? On Monday and then on Thursday, and then we'll circle back to Dobbs. We had a couple of good things.
So Monday, was the Coach Kennedy case, which you've probably been following that too. He got in trouble for praying on the football field. And so that, of course, he took the school to court, and then that went also to the Supreme Court level. And they also voted in favor of Coach Kennedy, which is huge.
And
for
not
religious
even
liberties.
and not even just Coach Kennedy, but again, kind of like the Dobbs decision, the court took the opportunity not just to defend this one specific thing, but to really look backward at some atrocious precedent that has been set forward and throw it out. So similarly, they ditched Roe and Casey, which wasn't even needed. And I know we've talked about that with some of our coverage, that Chief Justice Roberts wanted to rule much more narrowly, but the others took the opportunity to revisit this. Likewise, not just ruling in favor of Coach Kennedy with his First Amendment right to free speech and to religious liberty, to pray, whether or not he's a state employee of a school, but they went so far as to throw out what's called the lemon test, which I know that phrase is known by a lot of people, but not everyone knows, like, oh, this is a Supreme Court case, the Lemon v, and I forget what the V is. We all just talk about the lemon test. See, this tells you how ingrained it is without the information. But what that comes from, the Supreme Court had decided a case where they kind of put down two merits of, well, this is how we will judge if something is in violation or okay by the First Amendment when it comes to the quote unquote separation of church and state. This is when we really started seeing, which of course you and I know that's not in the Constitution, but it is a construct that's been created specifically to discriminate against religion in public, Christianity in public specifically. But the lemon test, if something was secular in nature or intent, and then secular in outcome, and I'm paraphrasing heavily, if it meets these two criteria, then it can be considered permissible according to the First Amendment. You're not in violation of the separation of church and state, et cetera, and so on. Well, that was so vague and ambiguous. Honestly, the court hasn't they haven't been abiding by that for a number of years. But this court officially took the opportunity to throw out that so-called precedent and said, no, this is a horrible way to do things. We have to be much more clear about historical precedent and the founders' intent, the people who wrote this. What do they mean? Not this precedent that we don't even abide by anymore. So yet again, not only did they rule in favor of one person's religious liberty, but they did us a service in throwing out some atrocious principle set down by an activist court before.
And then last but not least, I feel like you were very excited about this case this week. The West Virginia versus EPA.
Yes.
Do you want to explain why?
Well, first of all, we all just got to sing about West Virginia and Mountain Mama. It was a good week for that. But all joking aside and song references aside, all of us, it's true. You need to go to more blues games here. That'll put that song into your head. But not only was today a huge blow to the Environmental Protection Agency, which is truly one of my two least favorite, and I think everyone's two least favorite executive agencies that just makes a nuisance of themselves and runs amok with power. Not only did they smack them down, but again, by a pretty strong majority, the court set down a precedent that, there are a lot of executive agencies that are overreaching far too often and claiming power that they need to have express specific congressional approval to do so. And the phrase that they had in there, let me see and quote it exactly, but the phrase was essentially, I've lost it now. I had too many notes open. But basically the precedent that they threw out was that, this is a broad sweeping issue, so we can go ahead and assume that Congress would have given us this power and do it anyway. And the Supreme Court essentially reined that back in and said, no, there's a reason why you're the enforcement agent. You're a regulator, not a lawmaker. The lawmaker makes the law. The lawmaker gives you approval to go beyond the written law. And I mean, this is the EPA, and the other one I'm referring to, obviously, our least favorite is the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, constantly has taken upon itself the duty to vastly expand and change and redefine things in the National Firearms Act and the Gun Control Act of '68, things that Congress very specifically wrote a law on. The ATF isn't just enforcing and regulating the law. They've added to it significantly, and they're making decisions that, whether I like it or not, Congress ought to pass a law that clarifies or expands that definition. So the EPA, the ATF, fill in the blank, one of the alphabet soup agencies, there's a lot of liberties that have been taken to create and enforce things that Congress has never approved. And the Supreme Court said, stop, that needs to end. And the states are right. You all have overreached, and Congress needs to give some specific approval on this. So this was another really solid decision across the board.
Yeah. Have you shared those press releases?
I have. They're all up on our website at phyllisschlafly.com. I'm going to start hitting them down here now that we're moving on into another section. But we'll make sure that all these resources are linked down below, the things that we've been talking about.
So check those out. Again, this week we always seem to have exciting things that are happening or stuff that we're warning people about in our press releases. But this week was huge with 5 decisions that are just really great for conservatives. So I'm sure Ryan had a lot of fun writing those press releases. I know the rest of us really enjoyed getting those, reading those, and sharing them out with others as well. And you can do the same. And also be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page and also share this video. And if you have any questions, throw those in the comments section and we'll answer those as the video goes on. Yeah, absolutely. And I already see one actually. Mark has asked, or not asked, he has demanded, we need an Eagle Council event in September. Mark, an Eagle Council event is coming this fall. We have spent far too many years, it feels like, even though it's only been 2, missing out on in-person events. And even though it's been great that we've been able to do some live stream things and learn how to broadcast to a bigger audience, we are ready, as you and everyone else are, to get back to in person. It's definitely more to plan, but it is far more well, it's more gratifying, it's more effective, it's just great. So that's coming this fall. We will have details announced for that very soon. This is not the time and the place where I'm allowed to put stuff like that out there, but there will be an Eagle Council this fall, and we may take that show on the road. You never know. We hope to expand it, though, so that's coming. Last but not least, though, going ahead. A special big news. And this is, and there's a little, I'd like to get into we'll keep it very brief. But there are a lot of things when it comes to the Dobbs decision that's come down. Really, if you look at it, the decision itself was not about abortion per se. It was really about who gets to decide about whether we regulate, restrict, or just give unrestricted access to abortion. That does not belong to us, to the court. Which is why we're overturning Roe and Casey. Essentially, that's what the direction Dobbs went down. It was a jurisprudence decision, not really an abortion decision. It turned over the abortion decisions back to the people and their duly elected representatives. So this is just beginning. And as a result, the special announcement that I'd like to give is that we're going to be putting together a whole toolbox. Well, it's already being put together of everything that we are writing on this, of audio, of video. There are so many resources that we're starting to put together that I want to make sure we give all of you in one spot. So there's going to be a web page coming that is going to have the Dobbs toolkit. And we're going to make sure that whether it's audio, video, press releases, if there's action to be taken in state legislatures, whatever it is, we are going to be trying to accumulate everything in one spot and give it to you in easy access. And some of those things that are going to have to be decided, it's not just legally and legislatively, but we're going to have to work some stuff out, especially amongst the pro-life movement. Where does some of this stuff happen? Does Dobbs really go back to the states? Or does abortion, really go back to the states? Or ought we to pass something at the federal level? Is it murder or not? And this is where these conversations get kind of interesting, because I look at it and say, well, if it's murder, then why would we allow a state to violate this right that we think is recognized by the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness declaration, the independence, and the Constitution? We talk about these things. So I think we should put it at the federal level. Why should we leave it up to the states? And I personally think that we should leave it up to the states, because if it's at a local level, things seem to actually get done and get taken care of. So I'm speaking for myself or Joanna when I say this, but I believe that this issue should be at the local level, at the state level, and each state can decide what they want to do. And it also gives people decisions. They can move to a different state if they don't agree with them.
And to be abundantly clear, we're not giving the official position of the organization or even necessarily our set positions. This is just, these are the conversations that need to be had.
And these are the conversations
I look at it and I say
here in the office too.
Exactly. And that's why I look at something like this and I say, as much as I agree with you, my federalism likes that, the states' rights side of my brain, why would I allow California and New York the right to continue violating the most fundamental rights? Shouldn't we do something that ends it there as well? How can our country go on with states that are so vastly divided still, which I mean, arguably it's kind of how it is now, but at this point, everyone's kind of been, the states that have been fighting are the ones that are fighting to regulate or restrict abortion, not to allow it. So now if it's the other way around, aren't we just going to do this all over again? Shouldn't we seal the deal and go at the federal level?
I think that we're going to be more effective at the state level because they're already going to be fighting in the states individually. And those states that don't want it are going to fight hard to not allow abortion or the option of abortion in their state.
And then even there at the state level, would you say we should put it into legal code and law, or should it be added as constitutional amendments state by state? Which one has more power moving forward?
Ooh, we didn't talk about this.
Exactly. Well, and that's kind of the conversation to have at the federal level. You want to talk about doing something like this federally, nationally. And I just had this conversation with Gwen this morning in the hallway back there in another unauthorized caucus. Before 9 a.m. though, so it was technically, it didn't matter if it was authorized or not. But there, if we're going to do this at the national level, do you do it in legal code and law so it can be undone? Or does it need to be put down as an amendment so it's extremely hard to undo, but an amendment would be harder to get through in the first place?
See, I would almost say instantly legal code and law.
And
but
see,
I
would
people
almost
will
instantly
disagree
say
with
amendment.
Me. Yes.
See, and that's.
But he also said the other day he wasn't. Well, I thought I understood you that you weren't federal, and then you kind of had a different opinion today. So I thought that was.
You never know where I go.
No.
Again, though, these are the things that are going to need to be worked out because, to our point, and we'll close out on this. The Dobbs decision is not. It may be the end of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, but it is just the beginning of the opportunity for the pro-life movement to advance our cause and to figure out how this gets legislated across the states and likely in Congress. Because even if we don't put forward and decide it should stay in the states, there will be legislation to codify Roe. You can guarantee to codify the right to abortion from the left. And that's going to have to be fought tooth and nail. It's likely going to continue to be a legal battle as well as a legislative one. And then, of course, in the states, it will continue to be an activist battle, which it has. And that's why I encourage you, be involved and engaged in this. Go take a look at the resource page that we're going to be putting together. I'll make sure everyone gets an email on that when it's ready. And that's how we go, because the history of this, I mean, not just the 50 years, but several years ago, Janet Porter, a very good friend of ours and a warrior for young women and unborn children, started putting together the Heartbeat Bill movement and putting that out in the states. And really, that was the genesis of the Gestational Age Act in Mississippi that spiked this whole thing off into the Supreme Court. And thanks to Mississippi, they decided to argue on the basis that Roe was unconstitutional, ought to be overturned. So here we are. One thing leads to the next, and at the very beginning of it was a grassroots movement in one state to see abortion restricted in a certain manner. Make no mistake, legally, legislatively, and at an activist level, the work has just started for us. So we'll be the best resource we can, and we need you to be involved and vigilant with us in every way that you can as well.
Yep. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you joining our weekly live streams, our Unauthorized Caucus, and we will see you all next week. Same time, same